The world stopped when Uncle Ray shoved me to the ground. Dust stung my eyes, and the scent of dry wheat filled my lungs as I hit the earth, heart pounding like a war drum. I was 18, and in that moment, I thought I'd lost everything: my family, my home, maybe even myself. It was the summer of 1995, in a sleepy Nebraska town where the horizon stretched forever and secrets were buried under fields of gold. I was Ethan Carter, a lanky kid with dreams too big for this place. My Uncle Ray, a towering man with calloused hands and a Bible-thumping voice, had raised me since my parents died in a car crash when I was 6. He was all I had, but he wasn't mine, not really. He was a man of rules, of right and wrong, and I'd just broken his cardinal one. I'd been caught kissing Tommy Hargrove behind the barn. Tommy was my best friend, my everything, with his sun-bleached hair and eyes like a summer storm. He'd been the only one who saw me while I saw me in a town that expected me to blend into the plaid shirts and church pews. We'd been sneaking moments for months, stolen kisses under starlight, hands clasped in the dark of his pickup truck. But that afternoon, Ray had seen us. His face had twisted, not with anger, but with something worse: disgust. He'd dragged me to the field, away from Tommy, away from prying eyes, and pushed me down. "Stay there," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "You don't move until I say." I scrambled to my knees, dirt smearing my jeans. "Uncle Ray, I don't," he snapped, pointing a finger like a gun. "You don't get to speak. Not after that. That's sin." Sin. The word cut deeper than the fall. I'd heard it in church, whispered in town, but never aimed at me. Not like this. I wanted to scream that it wasn't sin, it was love, the kind that made my chest ache and my world brighter. But Ray's eyes held no room for argument. They were hard, like the flint he used to sharpen his tools. He turned and stalked back toward the house, leaving me in the field. The sun was dipping low, painting the wheat in shades of fire. I sat there, heart racing, wondering if this was it, if he'd kick me out, if I'd lose the only family I had left. Tommy was out there somewhere, probably scared, probably hating me for getting us caught. I buried my face in my hands, the weight of it all crushing me. But then I heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Ray was coming back. I braced myself, expecting a lecture, a belt, or worse. Instead, he stopped a few feet away, his silhouette dark against the sunset. He held something in his hands, a small, worn book. Not the Bible, but something older, its cover frayed and faded. He tossed it into the dirt beside me. "Read it," he said, his voice softer now, almost broken. "Then we'll talk." I picked it up, my hands trembling. The pages were yellowed, filled with handwritten notes in a scrawl I didn't recognize. It was a journal, dated decades ago. I looked up at Ray, confused, but he was already walking away again, his shoulders hunched like he carried a weight heavier than mine. I opened the journal, and the first line hit me like a punch. I loved him, and it cost me everything. The rest of that evening, I sat in the field, reading by the fading light. The journal belonged to a man named Samuel, someone I'd never heard of. His words were raw, aching, telling a story of love in a time even less forgiving than mine. Samuel had been in love with a man named Eli, a farmhand who worked their land in the 1960s. They'd hidden their relationship, meeting in secret, carving out moments in haylofts and under starlit skies. But someone had found out, and it had torn their lives apart. Samuel wrote of shame, of fear, of a town that turned its back on him. He wrote of Eli leaving, of never knowing if he was alive or dead. The final entry was a single sentence: "I'll carry him in my heart, even if it kills me." I closed the journal, my throat tight. Why had Ray given me this? Was it a warning, a punishment, or something else entirely? I didn't know, but the words burned into me, mirroring my own fear, my own love for Tommy. I wanted to run to him, to tell him we'd find a way. but the weight of Ray's judgment kept me rooted. When I finally trudged back to the house, Ray was sitting on the porch, a bottle of whiskey in his hand. He didn't look at me, just stared at the horizon. "You read it?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, slow and heavy. "That was my brother's." My heart stopped. Ray's brother. My father. The man I barely remembered, who died when I was a kid. I opened my mouth to ask, but Ray held up a hand. "Not tonight," he said. "Go to bed, Ethan. We'll talk tomorrow." I lay awake that night, the journal under my pillow, my mind racing. My father had been like me. He'd loved someone he wasn't supposed to, and it had broken him. Was Ray trying to tell me I was doomed to the same fate? Or was there something else, some hope buried in those pages? The next morning, I found Tommy waiting for me by the old oak tree near the creek. His face was pale, his eyes red from crying or lack of sleep. "Ethan," he said, his voice breaking. "What do we do?" I wanted to hold him, to promise him everything would be okay. But the weight of the journal, of Ray's reaction, held me back. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'm not giving you up." He reached for my hand, and for a moment, the world felt right again. But then I heard the crunch of gravel Ray's truck pulling up. He stepped out, his face unreadable, and I braced myself for another fight. Instead, he walked toward us, his hands in his pockets. "Tommy," he said, his voice steady, "you're coming to dinner tonight. Both of you." I blinked, stunned. Tommy's grip on my hand tightened. "What?" I managed. Ray looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes, not anger, not disgust, but pain. "You're my family, Ethan, and family doesn't turn its back." That dinner was the most surreal moment of my life. Tommy sat across from me, nervous, his fork trembling as he pushed mashed potatoes around his plate. Ray sat at the head of the table, quiet, his eyes flickering between us. The journal lay in my room, its words echoing in my head, but I didn't dare bring it up. Not yet. After dinner, Ray took me aside. "I don't understand it," he said, his voice low. "I don't know if I ever will. But I lost my brother because I didn't try. I won't lose you too." I didn't know what to say. The man I'd feared, the man who'd pushed me down, was standing here, offering me something I hadn't expected, a chance. It wasn't acceptance. Not fully, but it was a start. And in a town like ours, in a world like ours, that was more than I'd dared hope for. Tommy and I walked back to the creek that night, hand in hand, the stars bright above us. We didn't know what tomorrow would bring, whispers in town, judgment from others, or even Ray changing his mind. But for now, we had each other, and we had a flicker of hope, fragile but real, that maybe, just maybe, we could build something stronger than the world trying to tear us apart. The days that followed felt like walking on a tightrope. Tommy and I were cautious, stealing glances instead of kisses, afraid to test the fragile truce with Ray. The journal haunted me, its pages a map of my father's pain, and I couldn't shake the fear that my story might end like his. Ray kept his word, though. He didn't bring up the barn incident again, but his silence was heavy, like he was wrestling with ghosts I couldn't see. I caught him sometimes, staring at old photos in the living room, him and my dad as kids, grinning in overalls, arms slung around each other. I wondered what he'd been like before the world hardened him, before my dad's secret tore them apart. In town, whispers started to spread. Mrs. Callahan, the church organist, gave me a cold stare at the grocery store. Tommy's boss at the feed store cut his hours, muttering something about keeping things decent. We weren't stupid, we knew what they were saying. But we kept our heads down, clinging to the hope that Ray's change of heart might shield us. One afternoon, Tommy and I were fixing a fence on the edge of Ray's property when a truck roared up, kicking up dust. It was Billy Hargrove, Tommy's older brother, a burly guy with a temper as hot as a July noon. He jumped out, his face red, and marched toward us. "You think you can just parade this around?" He spat, glaring at Tommy. "You're shaming the family." "Tom." Tommy stepped forward, fists clenched. "Back off. Billy, this ain't your business." "It's everybody's business when you're flaunting it." Billy shoved Tommy hard, sending him stumbling. I caught him, my heart racing. But before I could say anything, Ray appeared, his shotgun slung over his shoulder like he'd just been hunting. "Billy Hargrove," Ray said, his voice calm but steel-edged. "You're on my land. You got a problem. You take it up with me." Billy hesitated, sizing Ray up. Everyone knew Ray Carter didn't bluff. After a tense moment, Billy spat on the ground and stormed back to his truck, tires screeching as he peeled out. Ray looked at us, his expression unreadable. "You boys finish that fence," he said, then walked away. Tommy was shaking, his bravado gone. I pulled him close, not caring who saw. "He's wrong," I whispered. "You're not ashamed." Tommy nodded, but his eyes were distant. That night, he didn't come over. He texted Mea Rarity, since cell phones were still new in our town, saying he needed space. I lay awake, the journal open beside me, reading Samuel's words about losing Eli. The fear gnawed at me. Was Tommy slipping away? The next day, I found him at the creek, skipping stones across the water. His face was bruised, a purple mark blooming under his eye. "Billy," he said before I could ask. He waited for me at home. Rage boiled in me, but Tommy grabbed my arm. "Don't, Ethan. It'll only make it worse." "We can't just let him," I started. But Tommy cut me off. "I'm not leaving you," he said, his voice fierce. "But this town, it's gonna eat us alive if we stay." The words hung between us, heavy with truth. I'd always dreamed of leaving, going to a city where we could be ourselves, where love didn't come with a target on your back. But Ray was my family, my home. Could I leave him after he'd stood up for us? That night, I confronted Ray. He was in the barn, sharpening tools, the air thick with the scent of oil and hay. "Why'd you give me the journal?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What are you trying to tell me?" He set down the blade, his eyes meeting mine. "Your dad loved someone he couldn't keep." I didn't understand it then. I called him names, pushed him away. He left home, and I never saw him again until he came back with your mom, pretending to be someone he wasn't. I swallowed hard, the pieces clicking together. My dad had hidden who he was, married my mom to fit in, to survive, and it had killed him inside. "I don't want that for you," Ray said. "But this town, it's not kind to people like you. Like him." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "Tommy wants to leave. I don't know if I can." Ray was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "If you stay, you'll fight every day. If you go, you'll have a chance. But whatever you choose, Ethan, you're still my nephew." His words were a lifeline, but they didn't make the choice easier. Tommy and I spent the next few days planning, whispering about city Chicago, maybe, or San Francisco, where we could start over. But every time I looked at Ray, at the farm that had raised me, my heart ached. Could I leave this behind? Could I leave him? One evening, Tommy came over with a map, his eyes bright with a mix of fear and excitement. "I got enough saved for bus tickets," he said. "We could go tomorrow." I froze. Tomorrow. It was too soon, too real. I thought of Ray, of the journal, of my dad's regrets. I thought of Tommy's bruise, of Billy's anger, of a town that would never let us be. But I wasn't ready to decide, not yet. That night, I dreamed of my dad. He was young, laughing with a man I didn't know, Eli, maybe in a field like ours. They were happy, free, until the world closed in. I woke up with tears on my face, the journal clutched in my hands. The next morning, I found Ray in the kitchen, coffee in hand, staring at an old photo of him and my dad. I sat across from him, the journal between us. Was Dad happy? I asked. Before everything. Ray's jaw tightened. For a while, he was. With Eli. But this place, it broke him. I nodded, the weight of his words settling in. I told him about Tommy's plan, the bus tickets, the dream of a new life. Ray listened, his face unreadable, then said, "You do what you gotta do, Ethan. But don't think it'll be easy out there." He was right. Leaving meant starting over with nothing but each other. Staying meant fighting a town that might never change. I spent the day wrestling with it, walking the fields, tracing the paths Tommy and I had taken. Every corner held a memory, our first kiss by the creek, the night we'd lain in the wheat, dreaming of a future we couldn't name. Tommy found me at dusk, his backpack slung over his shoulder. "I'm going," he said, "tomorrow morning. With or without you." His words hit like a slap. I wanted to beg him to stay, to give me time, but I saw the bruise on his face, the fear in his eyes. He wasn't just running toward something, was running away from a life that was suffocating him. "I need you with me," he said, his voice breaking. "But I can't stay here, Ethan. Not after Billy. Not after everything." I pulled him into my arms, the world blurring around us. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Of leaving. Of staying. Of losing you." He kissed me, soft and desperate. And for a moment, it was just us 12 boys in a field, holding on to each other like we could stop time. But time was slipping away, and I had to choose. That night, I sat with Ray on the porch, the journal in my lap. "Dad never got his happy ending," I said. "Did he?" Ray shook his head. "He tried to fit in. Married your mom. Had you? But he was never whole. I didn't see it then. I do now." His words cracked something open in me. I didn't want to live half a life, hiding who I was to make others comfortable. But I didn't want to lose Ray either. He'd raised me, loved me in his gruff way, even when he didn't understand me. "I'm going with Tommy," I said finally, my voice steady. "Tomorrow." Ray nodded, his eyes glistening. I figured. "You're braver than I was." He stood and pulled me into a hug, the first real one I could remember. It was awkward, brief, but it said everything he couldn't. I went to bed with a mix of fear and hope, the journal under my pillow like a talisman. The next morning, Tommy and I met at the bus station, our bags packed with little more than clothes and dreams. Ray drove us there, silent the whole way. When we got out, he handed me an envelope. "Don't open it till you're settled," he said, "and call me when you get there." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Tommy and I boarded the bus, our hands clasped under the seat. As the engine roared to life, I looked out the window and saw Ray standing there, his face a mix of pride and pain. I waved, and he raised a hand, then turned away. The bus pulled out, and Nebraska faded behind us. Tommy leaned his head on my shoulder, and I opened the journal one last time, reading Samuel's final words. "I'll carry him in my heart, even if it kills me." But I wasn't Samuel. I wasn't my dad. I was Ethan, and I was choosing my own story. Chicago was a shock to the system. The city was loud, chaotic, a far cry from the quiet fields of Nebraska. Tommy and I found a cheap apartment in a rundown building, the kind where the walls were thin and the heat barely worked. But it was ours, and for the first time, we could hold hands in public without looking over our shoulders. We got jobs at a coffee shop, Tommy at a bookstore scraping by on tips and minimum wage. It wasn't glamorous, but it was freedom. We'd lie in bed at night, laughing about the customers we'd served, planning a future we could finally see. But the past wasn't done with us. One night, I opened Ray's envelope. Inside was a letter and a check for $5. 000. The letter was short, in Ray's blocky handwriting. "This was your dad's," He wanted you to have a chance. Don't waste it. Call me. I cried reading it. Not just for the money, but for what it meant. Ray hadn't just let me go, had given me his blessing. In his own way. I called him the next day, and we talked for an hour. About nothing and everything. He didn't ask about Tommy, but he didn't need to. He was trying, and that was enough. But freedom came with a price. Tommy started getting letters from his family, angry, pleading, manipulative. Billy wrote the worst ones, calling him a disgrace, threatening to track him down. Tommy tried to shrug it off, but I saw the toll it took. He'd wake up from nightmares, his face pale, his hands shaking. One night, he broke down. What if they're right? He whispered. What if I'm wrong for this? For us? I held him, my heart breaking. You're not wrong. I said. We're not wrong. They're just scared of what they don't understand. But the letters kept coming, and Tommy started pulling away. He'd work late, avoid my touch, stare out the window like he was looking for answers in the city lights. I was losing him, and I didn't know how to stop it. One evening, I came home to find him packing a bag. I need to go back, he said, his voice hollow. Just for a bit. To fix things with my family. Tommy. No, I pleaded. They'll hurt you. You know they will. I have to try, he said, his eyes pleading for me to understand. I can't keep running. I wanted to scream, to beg him to stay, but I saw the resolve in his face. He was going back to Nebraska, to the same town that had bruised him, that had driven us out. I let him go, but it felt like losing a piece of myself. The next few weeks were a blur. I worked. I ate. I slept. But it was like moving through fog. I read the journal again, tracing Samuel's pain, my dad's pain, and now mine. I called Ray, hoping for advice, but he was as lost as I was. Give him time, he said. He's got to find his own way. Then, one night, Tommy called. His voice was shaky, barely audible. Ethan, I need you. I'm at the bus station. I didn't think, I just ran. When I got there, he was sitting on a bench, his face bruised again, his eyes hollow. I pulled him into my arms, and he sobbed, clinging to me like I was the only thing keeping him upright. They didn't listen, he said. They'll never listen. We went home, and I held him all night, promising we'd face it together. The city was hard. The world was hard. But we had each other. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Tommy didn't talk much about what happened in Nebraska, but the bruises told their own story. We settled back into our life in Chicago, but it was different now. We were stronger, but scarred, carrying the weight of a town that hadn't wanted us and a family that hadn't understood. I kept in touch with Ray, calling him every week. He'd tell me about the farm, about the harvest, about the town's gossip. He never asked about Tommy directly, but he'd say things like, "You boys doing okay?" And I'd hear the care in his voice. He was trying to rebuild what he'd lost with my dad, and I was grateful for it. One day, a package arrived from Ray. Inside was a photo of him and my dad, young and laughing, and a note, "Found this in the attic. Thought you should have it." I framed it, hung it above our bed, a reminder of where I came from and what I was fighting for. Tommy and I started going to a local support group, a place where people like us could talk, laugh, cry. It wasn't perfect, but it was a community, something we'd never had in Nebraska. We made friends, found mentors, learned how to navigate a world that wasn't always kind. Tommy started smiling again, his nightmares fading, though the scars both visible and not remained. One evening, we walked to a park near our apartment, the city lights glittering around us. We sat on a bench, watching the sunset, and Tommy took my hand. "I'm glad we left," he said. "I'm glad we're here." "Me too," I said, and I meant it. The road had been hard raised shove, Billy's fists, the fear of losing each other, but it had led us here. to a life we could call our own. I thought of the journal, of Samuel and Eli, of my dad. Their stories hadn't ended happily, but they'd loved fiercely, against all odds. And now, Tommy and I were writing our own story, one where love didn't have to hide, where we could be whole. As the sun dipped below the skyline, Tommy leaned his head on my shoulder, and I felt the weight of the past lift. Just a little. We weren't fixed. Not completely. But we were healing. And in that moment, under the Chicago sky, I knew we'd keep fighting for us. For the life we deserved. For the love that had carried us through.